The night was quiet inside the alien academy. The long silver halls glowed softly under the dim blue lights. Cleaning drones were parked in their corners, asleep until morning. The only sound was the slow squeak of a mop and the quiet hum of a man's low whistle. Mark, the human janitor, had worked in this place for almost 2 years. He liked the night shifts. The aliens mostly stayed in their rooms at this hour, and he could clean in peace. The air always smelled like metal and rain, and the stars outside the glass walls reminded him of Earth, the home he hadn't seen in 10 years. He moved from hall to hall, humming softly to himself. Everything felt normal until he reached the medical wing. That was when he heard it, a faint, trembling sound. It was a small cry, weak and scared. At first, Mark thought it was one of the machines, maybe a broken drone. But when the sound came again, it was unmistakably a child's sob. He stopped. His heart beat faster. "Hello?" he called softly, his voice echoing down the long corridor. No answer came. Only another soft cry, this time closer, coming from the dark corner near the last room. Mark pushed his cleaning cart aside and walked carefully. The doors around him were locked and dark, but one was half open, light flickering faintly from inside. He peeked in. Inside the room sat a small alien girl. She was no older than 6 or 7 by human guess. Her skin shimmered faintly like silver glass, and her eyes, bright blue and glowing, were fixed on nothing. She was sitting on a medical bed, holding a soft cloth in her hands, shaking quietly. Mark felt a tug in his chest. "Hey, kid," he said softly, stepping in. "Are you lost?" The girl didn't react. She just sat there looking straight ahead, tears slipping down her cheeks. He took another step. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you," still nothing. Then by accident, Mark dropped his flashlight. It hit the floor with a loud clank. In that instant, the girl's head snapped toward the sound. Her glowing eyes moved fast, almost like she could see where it fell. But then she stopped again, her gaze empty, lost. Mark frowned. He bent down and picked up his flashlight slowly. "Wait a minute," he whispered to himself. "You can hear me, but can't see me?" He waved his hand gently in front of her eyes. No reaction. But when he softly whispered, "Hey, it's okay," her fingers tightened around the cloth as if she could feel his voice. Mark's chest grew tight. Something wasn't right. Just then, a sharp voice came from behind him. "What are you doing here?" He turned quickly. A tall alien woman stood at the door wearing a dark lab coat. Her eyes were tired, and she looked both surprised and angry to find him there. I heard crying," Mark said carefully. "I thought someone was hurt." The woman sighed, rubbing her forehead. "You shouldn't be here. This area is restricted at night." Mark looked back at the girl. "Is she okay?" The woman's face softened. "She's my daughter," she said quietly. She's blind," Mark blinked. "Blind?" "Yes," the woman said, looking away. "She was born with damaged optic nerves. We've tried everything. She can't see anything, not light, not movement." "Please leave us alone," Mark nodded slowly. "All right," he said, but his eyes stayed on the little girl. "She doesn't look hurt, just lonely." The mother hesitated before replying. "She's special. Others don't understand her. I bring her here at night because the academy is quiet." Mark gave a small nod. He understood loneliness more than most. "Well," he said softly, "if you ever need extra help, I'm usually around." The woman didn't answer. She just guided her daughter gently by the hand and turned off the lights. As they walked past him, the little girl's glowing eyes moved again, just slightly, following the sound of his footsteps. Mark froze. It wasn't random. It wasn't blind movement. She knew where he was. When they disappeared into the next corridor, Mark stayed standing there for a long time, the silence pressing around him. He replayed that small moment again and again, the way her eyes had followed the sound, the tiny flicker of awareness. He had seen many strange things while working among aliens. Machines that could think, plants that could sing, but this was different. That child wasn't just blind. Something else was happening, something no one wanted to talk about. As he turned back to his cart and started cleaning again, Mark couldn't shake the thought. He whispered quietly to himself, "You weren't looking at the light, were you, kid? You were looking at me." And deep inside he knew. Whatever secret lay behind those glowing eyes, it was only the beginning. The next night, Mark couldn't stop thinking about the little alien girl. Her glowing eyes, her soft cry, the way she had turned her head when his flashlight fell. None of it made sense. He kept replaying that moment in his head while pushing his cleaning cart through the silent corridors. He told himself to forget it. It wasn't his business. But every time he tried, that small voice came back, echoing softly in his memory, the sound of a child who shouldn't be crying alone. When he reached the medical wing again, his hands slowed. The doors were locked as usual, lights dim, no sound this time. But curiosity pushed him. He looked left and right, made sure no one was around, then quietly slipped inside. The air felt colder tonight. The machines blinked in steady rhythm, and a faint hum filled the room. Mark walked slowly toward the same spot where he had found her before. The bed was empty now, but the faint smell of lavender lingered in the air. Then suddenly he heard a small laugh. It came from behind the curtain. He froze, listening. The voice was soft like a melody. It was her. Mark carefully pulled the curtain aside. The little alien girl sat on the floor playing with small glowing stones. Each stone floated a few inches above her hand, spinning slowly like tiny moons. She wasn't just sitting there, she was controlling them. "Hey there," Mark whispered. The girl gasped and dropped the stones, startled. They rolled across the floor and flickered out like dying stars. "It's okay," Mark said quickly. "I didn't mean to scare you." She turned her head toward his voice, those glowing eyes catching the faint light. Who are you?" she asked quietly. "Just the janitor," he replied with a smile. "My name's Mark, what's yours?" "Mira," she said softly. "That's a pretty name," he said. "Do you come here a lot?" She nodded slowly. "Mama brings me when it's dark. She says the light hurts my eyes." Mark's smile faded. "But you can hear really well." She tilted her head, curious. "You sound warm," she said. That line made him pause. "Warm?" She nodded again. "People sound like colors. Yours sounds like sunlight." Mark stared at her, surprised. The girl couldn't see light, yet she spoke about it as if she could feel it. Something deeper was going on. He knelt down beside her. "Can I try something, Mira?" She nodded carefully. Mark took out his flashlight again. He turned it on and shined it gently toward her hand. "Can you tell me if it's bright?" She frowned, confused. "Bright?" He waved the light closer. No response. Her glowing eyes stayed still. Then he turned the light off and whispered softly, "Mira." Instantly, her head turned toward him. He smiled faintly. "You really can't see light," he said, "but you can see." Mira tilted her head, unsure. "I can feel you." Like ripples. Mark felt a shiver down his spine. This wasn't blindness, this was something else. Something powerful. Suddenly, the door hissed open behind him. Lyra, the girl's mother, stepped inside holding a small tablet. Her face turned pale when she saw Mark and Mira together. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, rushing over. I heard her," Mark said, stepping back. "I wanted to make sure she was okay." Lyra grabbed Mira's hands protectively. "You have no right to speak to her without permission." Mark raised his hands. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean any harm." But he hesitated, then said, "She's not blind, is she?" Lyra froze. For a long moment, no one spoke. The machines beeped softly in the background. Finally, she whispered, "You don't understand." "Then help me," Mark said. She reacted to sound, not light. She can sense things. That's not blindness, it's something else. Lyra's eyes filled with guilt. She looked away. "Please, forget what you saw. You must never speak of this." "But why?" Mark asked. Lyra closed her eyes, tears forming. "Because they'll take her from me." Mark stepped closer, voice gentle. "Who will?" "The council," she said in a trembling voice. "They think her ability is dangerous. They made me—" "Seal it, seal it?" Mark repeated, confused. Lyra held her tablet tighter. "They called it a vision lock. They said it would keep her safe." Mark's heart pounded. "Safe or silent?" Lyra didn't answer. Her shoulders shook as she hugged her daughter close. "You don't know what they do to children like her," she whispered. "You're human. You wouldn't understand." Mark's eyes softened. "You're wrong. Humans have feared their own children too." Lyra looked up slowly, meeting his gaze. For the first time, her voice broke. "Then help me protect her." Mark nodded without hesitation. "I will." As he left the medical wing that night, the lights flickered faintly, and the echoes of Mira's voice followed him down the hall. "You sound like sunlight," she had said. He didn't understand it yet. But somehow, he knew she could see things no one else could. And the truth behind that gift was about to change everything. Lyra couldn't sleep that night. The image of her daughter's glowing eyes and the human janitor's questioning face wouldn't leave her mind. For years she had carried the truth alone, hidden behind lies, research papers, and fake smiles. But now someone else had seen the truth. Mark, a simple human with no rank, no power, no knowledge of alien science. Yet he had noticed what no other had dared to see. She stood by the window of her quarters looking out at the silver sky. The twin moons hung low, painting her world in soft blue light. Inside, her daughter Mira slept peacefully under a warm blanket. Lyra brushed a hand through the child's silky hair, whispering softly, "I'm so sorry, my little one." She remembered the day it all began. When Mira was born, the doctors were afraid. The baby's eyes glowed even when closed, pulsing like stars. Machines around her flickered as if her energy touched everything. The nurses had stepped back in fear. One of them whispered, "She can see through the dark." But the council saw it differently. They called it a mutation, a threat. They said children like her could see the very energy that powered their minds and ships. If she ever lost control, she could reveal their secrets or destroy what held their world together. They ordered Lyra, one of the best scientists in neural technology, to fix her daughter. She had refused at first. "She's just a child," she had said. "She doesn't even know what she's seeing." But the council didn't ask twice. They told her if she didn't do it, they would take Mira away and use her for study. So Lyra obeyed. She built a neural crystal that would lock away her daughter's gift. It looked like a small silver band that rested behind the ear, invisible to most eyes. When activated, it dimmed the light in Mira's eyes and her world went dark. From that day, Mira could no longer see energy, or light, or faces. Only sound and warmth. Lyra told everyone her child was blind. She smiled in meetings and said she was proud of her daughter's courage. But inside she died a little each day, and now, Mark knew. The next morning, Mark arrived early to clean the upper decks. He was quieter than usual, thinking about what Lyra had said. The words, "They'll take her from me," kept echoing in his mind. When he saw Lyra again near the lab hallway, she looked tired and pale. He walked over carefully. "We need to talk." Lyra didn't look up. "You shouldn't be here." "I don't care," he said softly. "She's a child, Lyra. She deserves more than this." Her hands trembled. "You don't understand what's at risk. The council monitors every test, every lab. If they find out I told you anything, Mira will vanish. They'll call it reassignment or medical error, and she'll never come back." Mark's jaw tightened. "Then we don't let them find out." Lyra looked at him confused. "Why would you risk yourself for us? You're human. You could lose your job, or worse." Mark took a slow breath. "Because I've seen what fear does to people. On Earth, we locked away our own because they were different too. Some said it was for safety, but it was just fear wearing a uniform." Lyra's voice broke. "I only wanted to protect her." He nodded. "Then let's protect her the right way." Silence filled the space between them. The hum of machines and the faint sound of Mira humming a tune in the next room made Lyra's eyes water. "She used to see colors in voices," Lyra said quietly. "She told me that love looked gold, kindness looked white, and anger looked red like fire. Now, she only sees shadows." Mark looked toward the door where the girl was. "Maybe we can bring the colors back." Lyra stared at him, searching his face for any sign of a lie. But all she saw was sincerity, a kind of human courage she had read about but never believed was real. Finally, she whispered, "There's one way. The vision lock crystal. If we can reach it, I can reverse the effect." "Where is it?" he asked. "In the restricted vault." "Level 7, Mark frowned. "That's guarded." "Yes," she said. "And forbidden. Only council members can enter." He looked around, then smiled faintly. "Good thing I have keys to every hallway in this place." For the first time in years, Lyra laughed, just a small broken laugh. But it was real. "Mark," she said, "you have no idea what you're getting into." He shrugged. "Maybe not. But I know one thing. No kid deserves to live in the dark." Lyra looked at him, her heart torn between fear and hope. For years she had carried her guilt like a chain, believing no one would ever help her break it. But now, standing beside a simple human janitor, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Faith. And that night, when she tucked Mira into bed and whispered goodnight, she added one more promise under her breath. "Soon, my little one. You'll see again." The following night, the academy was wrapped in silence. Outside, the twin moons hung low, casting a cold blue light over the glass towers. The hall shimmered with quiet energy, and every sound seemed louder in the still air. Mark pushed his cleaning cart slowly, pretending to work as usual. But tonight was different. He wasn't there to mop floors, he was there to break rules. Hidden beneath his work gloves was a stolen access card, one Lyra had slipped into his hand that afternoon. On it was a single instruction written in her careful script: Level 7 Vault Room, midnight. Mark looked up at the security lens in the hallway. It blinked red, scanning him. He smiled and waved like a tired janitor, then turned a corner where no camera could see. He pressed the card against the elevator panel and a soft beep echoed. The metal doors slid open with a whisper. As the elevator descended, his reflection in the polished wall looked tense and uncertain. "You're losing it, Mark," he muttered under his breath. "You're just a janitor, not some spy." But then he saw Mira's glowing eyes in his mind, the way she had turned toward his voice, the way she smiled when she said he sounded like sunlight. That small memory burned away his fear. When the elevator stopped, the air changed. It was colder, thicker. The walls here were darker, the lights dimmer, and strange symbols pulsed along the corridor edges. Lyra was waiting for him, wearing a dark cloak. "You came," she whispered. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Didn't think I'd leave you alone with this." She gave a faint smile. "Good, because I need you." They moved together down the long hallway, keeping close to the walls. The hum of distant generators echoed softly. As they passed a room with glass panels, Mark glanced inside and froze. There were other children. Alien children sleeping in clear pods, their eyes covered with glowing silver bands just like Mira's. "What is this place?" Mark whispered. Lyra's voice trembled. "The council called it a research center. But it's a prison. These children were born like Mira, able to see beyond energy and light. They locked them all away to keep order." Mark clenched his fists. "You said it was just your daughter." "I thought it was," she said, her eyes full of guilt. "Until I saw this." They continued walking until they reached the vault at the end of the corridor, a massive black door covered in glowing lines. Lyra took out a small device and began to connect cables into the wall panel. Her fingers shook, but her focus was sharp. "Can you open it?" Mark asked quietly. She nodded slightly. "I designed the locks. I can break them, but it will take time." He nodded and turned around, keeping watch. The air buzzed with strange energy. Every minute felt longer than an hour. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed down the hall. Mark's heart jumped. He turned and saw 2 armored guards approaching from the far end. "We've got company," he whispered. Lyra didn't stop working. "Buy me a minute," she said. Mark grabbed his mop and stepped into the hallway, pretending to clean. "Evening, officers," he said in his calmest voice. "Sorry if I'm in the way. Floors get messy at night." The guards stopped, confused. "This sector is restricted," one of them said. "Who authorized you?" "Maintenance request," Mark said, forcing a casual shrug. "Pipe leakage from the north vent?" "You wouldn't want another acid spill, right?" The guards exchanged looks. One of them tapped his wrist console. "No record of any request." Mark smiled faintly. "Yeah, system lag. Happens all the time. Trust me, I'm doing you a favor." Before they could reply, the vault door behind him hissed open. A soft blue light spilled out. Lyra stepped forward, her face pale but determined. "Mark," she said quietly. "Inside. Now." He dropped the mop and ran inside as the guard shouted, "Hey! Stop!" The door slid shut just as the first guard reached it. A dull thud echoed through the metal. Inside, the room was glowing with soft energy. Floating crystals lined the walls, humming in rhythm with a pulse that matched Lyra's breathing. In the center stood a silver pedestal, and on it a small, bright object like liquid glass. "That's it," Lyra whispered. "The vision lock core." Mark stared at it. "That tiny thing. That's what's keeping her blind." Lyra nodded, her voice trembling. "That's what the council made me create. It doesn't just block sight, it hides power. If I reverse it, Mira's eyes will open again." Mark stepped closer, the glow reflecting in his eyes. "Then let's do it." Lyra reached out, hands shaking as she lifted the core. The light pulsed stronger, bathing them both in blue. But just as she placed it in her bag, alarms began to scream. Red lights flashed across the walls. "They know." Lyra gasped. Mark grabbed her hand. "Then we move now." As they ran from the vault, the sound of boots echoed behind them. the hallway filled with sirens and flashing lights. Lyra held the core close, whispering, "Hold on, Mira. Mama's coming." And beside her, Mark tightened his grip, eyes fierce with determination. "We're not letting them take her again." For the first time, Lyra realized the truth. She wasn't fighting alone anymore. Rain fell softly outside the academy walls. The storm clouds above shimmered with electric flashes, echoing the chaos happening inside. Lyra and Mark ran through the maintenance tunnels, breath heavy, hearts racing. Behind them, the distant sound of alarms still echoed, warning the entire facility that someone had broken into the vault. Lyra clutched her small satchel close to her chest. Inside, the vision lock core glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. "If they catch us," she whispered, "they'll destroy this and us." Mark shook his head. "Not happening. We've come too far to stop now." They emerged from a hidden door into Lyra's private quarters. The lights flickered weakly. Mira was there, sitting on her bed, humming softly to herself and holding her toy stones. She turned her glowing eyes toward them as they entered. "Mom?" she asked quietly. "You sound scared." Lyra dropped to her knees beside her daughter and hugged her tightly. "It's okay, my love," she said, voice shaking. "Mama's here now." Mark closed the door behind them and pulled down the blinds. His uniform was dirty, his hands trembling, but his eyes burned with determination. "Tell me what to do," he said. Lyra stood up, wiping her tears. "The vision lock core controls the band inside her neural link. It blocks the pathways between her mind and her eyes. I can reverse it, but if I fail, it could—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Mark placed a hand on her shoulder. "You won't fail." Mira tilted her head, sensing their fear. "Why are you both shaking?" she asked softly. Lyra smiled faintly. "Because we're about to do something very brave." She guided her daughter to sit still in the center of the room. The glowing crystal device hummed on the table beside them. Lyra's hands moved quickly, connecting wires, calibrating energy nodes, and setting up the reversal system. Mark stood nearby, watching the doors, ready for anything. "How long will it take?" he asked. 30 seconds, she said. "Maybe less." "Then let's make them count," he replied. Lyra touched Mira's face gently. "You might feel a bright light inside, sweetheart." "Don't be afraid." "I'm not," Mira whispered. "I can feel you. You sound like gold right now." Lyra's throat tightened. "Gold?" "Yes," Mira said softly, smiling. "That's what love sounds like." Lyra pressed the activation key. The crystal glowed bright blue, sending a thin beam into the neural band behind Mira's ear. The room filled with a low hum that grew louder, deeper, vibrating through the floor. Mira gasped. Her hands trembled, and her eyes flickered wildly, glowing brighter than ever before. Mark stepped forward. "Lyra, is this normal?" "Her brain is waking up," Lyra said through gritted teeth. "It's reconnecting to her vision centers." Suddenly, a sharp flash of light filled the room. Lyra covered her eyes, but Mira sat still, her face calm. Then slowly, her eyes opened wide, no longer empty blue orbs, but shining like small stars. She blinked once, twice, and then looked straight at her mother. "Mom," she whispered in shock. "I can see you." Lyra froze, tears spilling instantly. You can see?" Mira laughed softly, pure and bright. "Your face, it's beautiful." Mark turned away, his eyes wet. He had seen a lot of strange things in his life, but nothing like this. Lyra hugged her daughter tightly, crying against her hair. "I'm so sorry, my love. I should have never taken your light away." But before the warmth of that moment could settle, a harsh alarm blared again, this time much closer. Mark turned to the door. "They've found us," Lyra held Mira close. "We can't run now." "Not while she's still recovering." Mark looked around quickly, then grabbed one of the maintenance panels. "Then we'll buy time." The door shook violently as guards began to force it open. Sparks flew. Voices shouted commands in the alien language. Mark pulled a small cleaning drone from his bag, rewired it quickly, and whispered, "You wanted a distraction, Lyra?" "You got one." He pressed a button. The drone zipped toward the door, releasing a blinding flash of cleaning foam and sparks. The guards shouted in confusion. Lyra grabbed Mira's hand. "Close your eyes, sweetheart." But Mira didn't close them. She stood tall, her small hand glowing with the same blue energy as the vision lock core. "No," she said softly. "I can help." Before Lyra could stop her, Mira lifted her hands. The air shimmered. The lights bent around her fingers like threads of light. Then, with a burst of energy, the door exploded outward, throwing the guards back. Lyra stared in shock. Mira. The little girl turned to her mother, eyes glowing with calm power. I can see everything now, Mama, she said. The truth, the fear, and the love. Mark stepped beside her, amazed. Kid, he whispered. You just knocked out a squad with your mind. She smiled shyly. I only wanted them to stop shouting. Lyra laughed through her tears. You did more than that. Outside, the hallway lights flickered. More guards were coming. But now Mira wasn't afraid. Her eyes shone like twin suns, lighting their way forward. Lyra looked at Mark, voice trembling but strong. We can't stay. We have to get her out of here. He nodded, gripping his mop handle like a weapon. Then let's finish what we started. And as the storm raged outside, they stepped into the light Mira had just awakened, no longer running in darkness, but guided by the child who could finally see. The rain outside had turned into a storm. Lightning cracked through the sky, flashing across the tall towers of the alien academy. The alarm still screamed through the halls, red lights painting every wall in warning. Lyra held Mira's hand tightly as they ran down the service corridor, her heart pounding like thunder. The vision lock core pulsed faintly inside her bag, still warm from the reactivation. Beside her, Mark ran with a mop handle in one hand and a fierce look in his eyes. They could hear the soldiers behind them, armored boots striking metal floors, commands shouted in the alien tongue. The council was no longer hiding. They wanted their experiment back. Lyra turned into an old cargo bay where the emergency lights flickered weakly. We can't keep running, she said, gasping. They'll surround the exit soon. Mark looked around, scanning the dim space filled with boxes and broken drones. Then we make a stand, he said calmly. Lyra shook her head. They'll kill you, Mark. They don't see humans as equals. You'll just be... He cut her off with a small smile. Just a janitor? Yeah, I've heard that before. He tightened his grip on the mop handle. Doesn't mean I can't fight for what's right. Before she could argue, the heavy door slid open with a hiss. 10 armored guards stormed in, weapons glowing with blue plasma light. Step away from the child, one shouted. Return the core immediately. Mira stood close to her mother, her glowing eyes reflecting the light from their weapons. For a moment, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Then Mark stepped forward. She's not your experiment, he said firmly. She's a little girl. Let her go. The guards aimed their weapons. You are out of line, human, one hissed. Mark didn't move. Then I guess I'm exactly where I need to be. Lyra whispered urgently, Mark, no. But before the guards could fire, the ground trembled. The air around Mira shimmered. The blue glow in her eyes intensified until it filled the room. The guards froze, their weapons shaking. The energy around them warped like heat over fire. What's happening? Lyra whispered. Mira's voice was calm. They're angry. I can see it. But I can also show them peace. The air turned still. The plasma weapons flickered and shut down. Every soldier stood in silence, eyes wide. Mira's glow expanded like a wave, reaching each of them. When it touched their armor, the blue lights dimmed to white. Mark blinked, amazed. She's controlling energy? Lyra's hands covered her mouth. No, she's healing it. She's balancing the fear with light. One of the soldiers dropped his weapon and stepped back, his voice trembling. What is she? Lyra stepped forward, holding her daughter close. She's what you made her hide, she said softly. She's what you were afraid of, understanding. Before anyone could respond, a new voice filled the air, cold and sharp. Enough, everyone turned. A tall alien figure entered the cargo bay, dressed in silver robes and carrying a staff that shimmered like glass. His eyes glowed with authority and rage. The High Counselor. Lyra's heart sank. Counselor Dravik, she whispered. He stepped closer, ignoring the trembling guards. So the traitor scientist and her human pet have undone years of protection, he said coldly. You've unleashed something you don't understand. Mark glared at him. She's just a kid. Dravik raised his staff. She is a weapon, human. That light in her eyes, if not controlled, can destroy minds. Lyra stood in front of Mira, trembling but firm. You're wrong. That light isn't destruction, it's empathy. Dravik pointed his staff toward her. Move aside, Lyra. Mark stepped up beside her. You'll have to go through both of us. The counselor's staff charged with power, lightning crackling along the floor. But before he could strike, a small hand reached out. Mira. She stood between them, calm and unafraid. Stop, she said softly. Dravik froze, his staff shaking. The power around him dimmed like his strength was being swallowed by her light. His expression changed, from rage to confusion, then to fear. "What are you doing to me?" he whispered. "I'm showing you," Mira said gently, "what you've forgotten to feel." In a blink, visions filled the air, floating images of the past. Alien children laughing, families smiling, worlds before war. Then the images shifted to darker ones. Council labs, cold machines, and the faces of frightened children behind glass. Dravik fell to his knees, trembling. "No, stop this." Mira lowered her hand. The light faded. Mark and Lyra stared in stunned silence. The once powerful counselor now looked small and broken. Mira turned to her mother and smiled faintly. "He understands now." Lyra knelt and hugged her daughter tightly. "My brave girl," she whispered. Mark looked at the silent guards who now lowered their weapons. "What now?" he asked quietly. Lyra wiped her tears. "Now we run, before the rest of the council arrives," Mark nodded. He glanced once at the fallen counselor, then turned toward the exit. "Come on, Sunshine," he said to Mira with a small grin. "Let's get you out of here." As they disappeared into the stormy night, the once feared child left behind a room full of silence and a single man of power, now kneeling in awe of the very light he had tried to destroy. The storm outside had calmed, but the academy was burning with chaos. Sirens wailed in the distance, lights flickered across the horizon, and the sky glowed faintly blue where Mira's power had touched the clouds. Mark guided Lyra and Mira through the service tunnels that led to the outer sectors of the alien city. His hands were cut and bruised, but he didn't stop. He could still feel the tremor in the floor from the earlier explosion. The council would soon recover, and when they did, they would hunt for them. "We're almost out," Mark said, breathing heavily. "One last checkpoint, then the open gates." Lyra nodded, holding Mira close as they hurried. Her eyes were red from tears, but her steps were strong. "They'll never stop," she whispered. "Not after what she did to Dravik. They'll stop when everyone knows," Mark said firmly. "When they see what she really is." They reached the final gate, a massive door overlooking the alien city beyond. The view was breathtaking even in the storm. Tall spires reached toward the stars, glowing in soft blue light, but between them were drones, guards, and scanners searching for the fugitives. "We can't go through there," Lyra said quietly. "They'll spot us in seconds." Mark looked around. "Then we make them see what they need to see." Before Lyra could ask what he meant, Mira stepped forward. Her eyes shone like two suns under the rain. "They're scared," she said softly. "They think I'll hurt them, but I don't want to fight. I want to show them light." Lyra knelt beside her, fear filling her voice. "No, Mira. If you use too much power, it could—" But Mira smiled gently. "Mama, I'm not afraid anymore." She stepped out into the open rain. The wind tugged at her silver hair, and drops of water sparkled as they passed through her light. Every drone turned toward her instantly, red sensors flashing. "Target located," a metallic voice said from above. Mark shouted, "Mira, wait!" But she didn't move. She simply lifted her hand toward the sky. The rain slowed. The thunder fell silent. Every drop of water in the air froze mid-fall, glowing faintly blue as her power spread outward. Then, slowly, the frozen raindrops began to move, not falling down, but rising up like stars returning to the heavens. Across the city, aliens looked up in shock as the sky turned into a field of floating light. The sight was so beautiful that even the guards lowered their weapons. Mira's voice echoed softly, carried through the glowing rain. "You said I was dangerous. You said I was broken. But I'm just seeing." Her light grew stronger. It washed over the buildings, the towers, the people watching from their windows. For a brief moment, everyone could feel what she felt. Warmth, kindness, peace. Lyra stood behind her, tears streaming down her face. "She's showing them what love looks like," she whispered. Mark smiled faintly. "Guess that's something no council can control." The guards who had been chasing them stopped moving. Some dropped to their knees, others simply stared in awe. The red lights on their weapons faded to white. Then, just as softly as it began, the glow faded. The rain fell again, gentle, warm, alive. Mira stumbled slightly and Lyra rushed to catch her. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" The girl nodded weakly, smiling. "I'm tired, Mama, but I can see everything now. Not just light. People's hearts." Mark crouched beside her. "And what do you see in mine, Sunshine?" Mira looked at him and smiled softly. Home. Lyra covered her mouth, trying not to cry. But before the moment could settle, a voice echoed through the speakers across the city. It wasn't harsh, it was calm, almost humble. "This is Councillor Dravik," it said. "Let all citizens stand down. The girl is no threat. She is proof that the future does not belong to fear, but to understanding." Lyra's eyes widened. "He's protecting her?" Mark chuckled. "Looks like even the council learned something tonight." In the distance, the sirens went silent. The drones returned to their ports, and for the first time in years, the city was quiet. Lyra looked up at the rising dawn. The storm clouds had broken apart and golden sunlight spilled across the horizon. Mira blinked, amazed. "It's so bright," she whispered. Mark smiled. "That's what freedom looks like, kid." As the first rays of morning touched their faces, Lyra turned to Mark. "What will you do now?" He looked at the endless city before them and shrugged. "Guess I'll need a new job, maybe something that doesn't involve mopping floors." Lyra laughed softly, a sound full of warmth. "You'll always be more than that, Mark." Mira reached out and took both their hands. "We can go anywhere now," she said. "We don't have to hide anymore." Mark squeezed her small hand gently. "No, sunshine," he said with a smile. "Now the world gets to see you." The three of them walked forward into the golden morning, leaving behind a city that would never be the same. And far above, as the clouds drifted away, the sunlight reflected in Mira's glowing eyes, two bright lights that had once been called dangerous, now shining as a symbol of hope for every being who had ever lived in fear of their own gift. For the first time, Lyra whispered, not with guilt but with pride, "My daughter helped the stars see again.